Hi, I'm Shiv.
And I'm Chitra.
We are the co-hosts of this show, Software People Stories.
We're happy to bring you stories of people associated with software as makers or consumers.
In every episode, we talk to people on their own personal and professional journeys,
their interests and approach to work and life in a free-flowing conversational format. We hope that you will be able to draw your inspiration from their experiences and insights.
These podcasts are made possible by PM Power Consulting, who have helped individuals, teams, and organizations on their delivery excellence journeys. Welcome to this episode of the Software People Stories. Today, my guest is Sukumar Rajagopal, who has over 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. He is a co-founder of a digital transformation and behavior transformation enabler startup called Tiny Magiq. In this conversation, Sukumar talks about his friend who inspired him to get into software, how on his first day at a client's place, he did something totally unconnected, as he thought, to software. The first lesson that he learned is about attitude. He also talks about what one can learn from working on a maintenance project and how his first role with a sales responsibility was so stressful, tending to a breakdown, and how he mustered courage to seek guidance to change the vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. His own personal transition to handle uncertainties in his CXO roles, and what he learned from a war veteran on doing pilot projects, taking an integrative approach to knowledge management and process to deliver knowledge just in time, how his blogging experiment opened up cross-business unit exchanges, and some techniques he used to foster innovation across a large organization, how he drew inspiration from a paper called The Ronald Coase Penguins by Yoshai Benkler on socio-psychological rewards, and why his company is called Tiny Magiq after solving large corporate problems, applying tiny changes in his own life, as in push-ups, and how it has helped him, and finally his perspective on the future of a career in IT. Listen on. Welcome, Sukumar, to this episode of the Software People Stories. I've known you, I don't know if you remember, for many years now, probably at least about 10 years. And also following many of the things that you tweet, that you write about, and things that you've done in your career. So we'll start with your self-introduction, and from there, the things that you've done and whatever experiences that worked for you or didn't work for you would all be very useful for our listeners.
Yeah, thank you, Sivaguru. Grateful to you for inviting me on this popular show of yours. I'm also grateful to Gayatri Kalyan Raman, my friend, who recommended me to you. Yeah, I do remember the K community meeting from several years ago that we may have met.
Yeah.
I think your strategy of even capturing these experiences seems influenced by KM, which I've been very passionate about ever since I became the Chief Knowledge Officer of Cognizant. I'm very eager to talk to you and see if I can add any value to your audience.
Absolutely. So we can start with how you got into software and what all you've done with software, because knowledge management, while very important for the knowledge era, is probably not recognized as something as part of the normal software lifecycle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so my life in software could be boiled down to essentially a set of happy accidents. In the second, I studied in BITS Pilani. I studied the electrical and electronics engineering 4-year course. And there was a programming course. We were taught Pascal and Fortran at that time. So there was a programming course, and one of my close friends, I hope I can take his name. His name is Srivatsam. He was kind of addicted to software. That is the best word I knew at that time. So he would go to the computer center constantly and write program. And we had to write programs on a punch card computer. We had to punch the cards and submit it. So I would just tag along with him. And he would be writing some fancy programs, and I will try my usual calendar, date, some program I was writing. So over those 2-3 years, I kind of imbibed the word that I later learned, the word passion. Software got infected by him. I am eternally grateful to him, because that's what, when Tata Consultancy Services came to the campus, I figured that that's the industry I should join. So had that accident not happened, I might not have joined software, because when I joined electronics engineering, I wanted to work in the hardware field.
So that is similar to how I got in as well. My project was in hardware, and a friend actually pulled me into software.
I see. Very nice. So that's how I started. And once I started in TCS as a programmer, I've had, like I said, right, there's a series of happy accidents that have happened. One, the day I was in TCS, I got a campus job. I finished the initial 3-month training program. They used to provide a 3-month training program. And then I landed in this Hinduja hospital in Mumbai. That was my client. And I joined the first day on the job. I have a boss who looks at me and says, welcome, and then he gives me a stack of papers and says, you have to file this into folders. At first I was a bit taken aback, saying, but then my boss was asking me to do it. So I did it. And a couple of hours later I went back to him and said, I have done it. Now he pointed me at one cupboard, which was filled with stacks of paper. And he said, now that you have done this well, please go ahead and file all those papers into folder. And at this point, I have lost it. Now, I am a 21-year-old man who couldn't even speak one full sentence in English. But I somehow communicated my irritation to him, saying, I am an engineer, and why do you need an engineer? I am thinking I am one smart engineer from BITS Villani, and I am not supposed to be doing things. And then he says some things that still ring in my ears. He said, young man, never bring that kind of attitude to me henceforth. A job is only as good as what you put of yourself into it. Now, I didn't fully grasp what it is that you were saying, but I could tell that he was giving me an admonition type of thing. And then he went ahead and said, young man, if I ask you to sweep the floor, take a broom and sweep the floor in the interest of keeping the customer happy, thou shalt do it. Now that a stern instruction has been given, being my obedient self, I did that. Of course, I didn't fully grasp what it is that he was saying. But I filled all the folders, everything, and then he just started assigning me programming jobs. It's possible that he was just testing my attitude. I didn't quite understand. Later on, I started doing programming things, and then the thing that I had was that I went to another senior of mine and said, I was writing programs supposedly in a language called RPG4. This was some programming. This is the AS400 computer, and it had this proprietary language. And I was looking at all my peers, and they were writing code in C, and Java and C++ were not yet there. But C was the coolest thing. And I was very irritated that I am not in a C project. So I went to my senior and said, what is this? We are writing this RPG. Oh, this is all BS kind of thing. So then luckily for me, that senior, he called me aside and said, he took one RPG program and he said, some program somebody has written, this is like a maintenance engagement. This was also another peeve of mine, that I have been put in a maintenance project and I want to be in a C development project, right? So he walked me through line by line. Of course, I had learned RPG already, and it's a very simple language, so I was doing that. He showed me what are all the design errors that program had. And he said, it doesn't matter what language you are coding in. You have to abstract yourself away from whatever program technology it is and look at the design, architecture, that kind of principle. Because that you can take anywhere. It doesn't matter. Imagine receiving this kind of a lesson and I think this lesson I got within the first 3 months. Right? The only grateful part of me was I was able to go to him and express my dissatisfaction. Had I not done that, I might not have received these valuable lessons. So after that, I was like, cool, okay, Java, anything that came, fine. I was able to pick it up and keep it like at a level that it only deserves. So I was able to always focus on design, architecture, modeling, data modeling, any one of those principles that really helped me. Even now they help me because I can look at the big picture, look at the design, architecture and all that. So I had all these lessons, and I also learned that this maintenance thing that we all talked about in the peer group is another BS. Right? Why we didn't like maintenance projects was we had concluded that, you will only work on bug fix and you won't learn anything, which is completely not true. The amount of learnings I had in all the maintenance projects I have done, since then I have done several. Because I no longer would choose maintenance development, it doesn't matter. So I figured out that I actually can learn more and more in maintenance than in development. In development, you are given a spec and you have to code. You are actually not learning that much. In maintenance, you can see what mistakes they have made. And to me, it was like a Sherlock Holmes detective thing. Like, where is the bug? In which module is it coming from? I had royal fun. Right? So those are my initial lessons on how I got started. Now, of course, I could go on and on, but I think we can move to the next question.
So now, as to how it proceeded further from writing RPG code, which is pretty close to, from my understanding, machine code, or you have the RPG cycle and all that, to say architecting enterprise level solutions or strategies.
So that lesson I told you about architecture and design, right? I think that was one lesson. The other was, because it was AS400, it's a mini computer. So what I used to do was, after the day is over, I would stay back for another 2 hours and read all the manual.
Oh, okay.
And I would have tried all the commands. In fact, a lot of people would come to me later on to say, how do I do this? And I will be able to tell them. So I was under this idea that I should, and it didn't, all I had to do was spend some more time and I would learn it. Right? So I was happy. I am the known expert in this group and people will come to me, and I was like, this is great. Then I got transferred to Chennai, where I had to work in the mainframe, IBM 39.
Okay.
It was MBS at the ZOS had not yet come. Now my strategy of learning everything about the mainframe was a complete failure, because there is no way on earth that no matter how much time I spent, I could not learn all the subsystems in the main. In fact, to learn one subsystem like a CICS or a DB2 might take you a long time. Now I already got into a position where I have to supervise people.
Okay.
So this strategy of me was failing. So the next strategy I executed was, okay, I will sit with my team member. This was my idea of supervising people. So we used to work in 2-3 shifts, and first shift I will come work with, I had 2 people. First person comes in the morning shift, I will sit with him, make sure he is doing the thing. Next shift, another person will come, I will stay. I work 2 shifts, thinking that I as a supervisor was supposed to make them do things sitting with them. Obviously, that is not sustainable. How long I could do it? Slowly, then I learned how to lead people through this, and that's how my journey into leadership started. That I have to trust people. I give them, I don't need to know everything about what they are doing. I can actually leverage their ideas and their creativity and their skills and make something bigger happen. All these things I had to learn the hard way. There was no real management education type of thing at that time. You are pretty much thrown into the deep end, and if you survive, it's good. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know what would happen. That's so then obviously by that time I was in TCS for 7 years. I became a project manager. So I was managing projects, and I was able to manage with this strategy. And TCS, you already had this thing of developing a tool first before any project. So once you develop the tool, then it controls majority of how the code will be developed. So I was able to exert. And then the real leadership lessons came to me only in the next step when I joined Cognizant, and I became an account manager, which was more a P&L, business development and sales kind of job. So that was actually a significant milestone in my career, because I had probably a meltdown. In the sense, I was almost close to a nervous breakdown and ready to quit. And by then I had moved to America for a long-term engagement at a client site. I am the on-site program manager at this. And almost everything that I was looking at was going wrong, right? Sales we were losing deals, people were quitting, we were the unhappiest team in some survey the company did. They do the annual surveys, right? It's like I have a new boss who I didn't like. It's like I lost in that process about 5 kilos. And I used to come back home and then cry. Almost every other day I would come home and cry, because I was like, I didn't know what to do. This, what do you call it? Inability to handle that situation. I don't know what you call it.
Feeling helpless.
And my wife also, she tried, she is smart. She is also a software engineer. But we didn't know how to solve this problem. So this helplessness led me to these crying bouts and all that. Now my wife says that is the worst period in her life. Luckily for me, I had an advisor. So I called that advisor. Now, the lesson I learned is soon as I hit this first symptoms of the problem, I should ask for help. But then, see, this thing that you are seeking help means you are a weak person. Which is the feeling I am already having, right? I feel incompetent already. That I don't know how to handle this situation. And I was unwilling to accept that my own self, what would you call it, ego, self-esteem, whatever it is, that was unwilling to accept that I am not able to handle situation. That made it further difficult for me to seek help. So I was in this vicious cycle. So I called this advisor, and the advisor says, again, still things ringing in my head. He said, it seems like you are in a deep situation. Maybe you are taking the right decision to move out. But I'll tell you one thing. Just think about it and tell me. It's okay, you quit and then you go somewhere else. How can you be sure that there wouldn't be another set of problems there for you?
Right.
And obviously that made a light bulb go off in my head. Then he followed up with, okay, now that you say there also, I will suggest one thing. If that doesn't work, then you can be sure. That one thing was, pick one problem. You are saying everything is a problem, which seems to be correct based on what you are saying. Pick one problem and then try to solve it as best as you can. Seek help, whatever, solve it. So I picked one problem and I was able to solve that. And that set the virtuous cycle in motion.
Oh, nice.
And from there, I was able to turn around my life. And I mean, the many things about the value of people. I was not trusting people. It all boiled down to that. I was trying to do everything myself. And there was only so much I could do with one brain. So I started engaging more people, collaborate better, understand my clients better. I had this poor attitude about sales. Later on, I hear that all technical people have that kind of a bias. Like sales is infra dig, right? I mean, you have a certain, negative opinion about sales. So I had to come out of that also. So then now I actually teach sales.
Okay.
So I think sales is another skill. It's another thing that I could pick up, which I did. So all these things had to happen, and that's so. Then obviously now I am in this new track. I am doing well as a client partner. Then I became a practice director, then a practice head for the manufacturing and logistics practice, and then I moved back to India. At that point, my boss, the CEO of the company at that time, he was not my direct boss, but he said that I want you to, we are launching a board level initiative for knowledge management. I want you to run this initiative. Would you like to do that?
Okay.
And to me, it was like, at that point, I already spent 18 years in P&L. Delivery P&L. I said, okay, that seems interesting. So I took that. Now that launched me in a journey bit by bit. So after that, I became head of process quality, head of innovation, and then eventually the global chief information officer. So over the next 8 years, I held these CXO roles and did number of transformation projects. And then after that, I quit and I started this firm, Tiny Magiq, with my friend.
Okay.
So that's kind of
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Quite a few questions come to my mind.
Yeah.
From being an engineer or approaching things as an engineer and trying to solve problems or go and then address specific issues, when you had to take on these CXO kind of roles where probably most things are undefined, including probably what the outcome could be, how did you handle that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. See, one of the things, there are two things, and over a period of time, I realized that uncertainty, see, if you look at my meltdown experience, what was actually getting me was the uncertainty. Like I would go to the office fearing that something will break down, I will lose some deal, all of which were beyond my circle of control. Now, I have submitted a good proposal. That doesn't make my client buy from me. Somebody else might submit a better proposal. So obviously they will go with them. So this uncertainty kind of crushes you. So when you take on a problem like knowledge management, I am yet to find, and you have been in this space, I am yet to find a person, 2 km people agreeing that definition of what is knowledge. So I have entered a space which is, not only am I clueless about it, even now, the industry itself hasn't defined it very well. So it's very uncertain. Now, luckily for me, the next CEO, who is Frank, who I hold in high regard, he had organized a lecture by some US war veteran. So he talked about winning in fast time. And he and his co-author, they came and made a speech in one of our top management meets, and I had just become the CKO.
Okay.
And all it was he was saying, look, generally we tend to take a very serial kind kind of approach. You will start with a pilot project, then it succeeds, then you. He said, identify 10 opportunities and execute all 10 simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
10 being a number.
Yeah, right.
Could be any number, right? So I was very inspired by that idea. So what happened was I had already spent 10 years in the company, by then maybe 12 years in the company. I'm employee number 298 in Cognizant. So I knew most senior people. So 1995 I joined, 2006 whatever, 11 years probably I had already in the company. So I convinced some 7 or 8 BUs to run 7 or 8 pilot projects in KM. One group tried Wiki, one group tried blog, one guy tried forum, one guy tried this. All the pilots were started in the first 6 months itself. And obviously a lot of them failed. And then we picked up stuff, and then we started learning what exactly was the problem with KM itself. And luckily for me, Rajshri Natarajan, who you know, she was in my team, she came up with the idea that we will marry process and knowledge and deliver knowledge just in time. So that led to the whole program we call Cognizant 2.0, which is a new platform which we created, which would deliver knowledge just in time. So like I said, my life has been a series of happy accidents. So blogging somehow just took off within Cognizant because maybe they were very young people. It went viral. I mean, in less than a year, it was clocking some million page views and things like that. All the kids started blogging, and that pulled the top management in. Frank and other senior people started blogging. So it started creating this open environment, and ideas would spread very easily from one BU to another, which kind of set the stage for me. When the job of head of innovation was offered, I was able to move into that and leverage these KM tools to do innovation in a more organized fashion. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, so innovation, again, something that's probably interpreted differently. And also to get someone to actually innovate. How did you get them to start thinking about something beyond just an immediate problem solving or innovation?
Yeah, very good question. So when we started the innovation program, right, the idea was to build a culture of innovation. That was the mandate that was given to me, which meant that I kind of translated culture of innovation. That's big, what do you call it? Highfalutin, right? So I translated that to everybody should innovate. And then when we started talking to people, we would bring a bunch of associates into a room and ask them, why you are not innovating? And it led to one amazing finding, which even today in my business I continue to use. What would they say? I don't have time. The management isn't encouraging me. What is in it for me? I don't know how to innovate. I don't have the skills. So first time we did it, we captured about 10 reasons. And we have now done that since then across the world, across cultures, the same 10 reasons would come. In varying words. Then what we did was we would so we are already learned through a consultant how to do a brainstorming session. So we will take the first one, no time, and get the participants to brainstorm how to solve that problem. 99% of the time, someone in the room will say, I just have to do my job better, which is nothing but continuous innovation or Kaizen. So that is how we change the mindset. So now if I can do my job better, I will free up time, which is what I set out saying I don't have time. So they have entered a cognitive dissonance in their own mind. So that's how, and then of course the management innovation was done by one of my teammates. So actually my boss asked in one of the review meetings, okay, so you're talking about all this, how do I know that it's being done? He said, he's obviously a management person. He said the famous thing, what you can't measure, you can't manage. So that led one of my teammates to come up with a tool called Innovation Index, which we started publishing on a monthly basis. Every account, every practice, and by extension, the entire company will get an innovation index, which runs from 0 to 100, which actually measures how much innovation you did in that month in that account. And the only things we considered are innovation are not mentioned in the statement of work. If the client asks you to execute an innovative project, we won't count that in the innovation index. It has got to be something that wasn't specified by the client, and you still did it. This is a simple rule we came up with. And then publishing this index set off a kind of a viral chain reaction. Everybody would want to be on top of that index, and everybody wants to be known as an innovator. Anywhere in the world, this feeling that I want to be known as an innovator is a very powerful feeling. So we leverage that. I mean, we were not aware that there is such a thing. But when we started working on it, it appeared. So we would certify people as a champion, recognize people. We hold innovation events together, bring speakers, expert speakers to speak on various topics, make it into a fun. And this index kind of gamified the whole thing. Every innovation you submitted into the index gave you some points, which gets included in the index, and your index goes up. And every year the index will get reset to 0.
Oh, okay.
So you can't like, oh, last year I'm a winner. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Next year also again you have to compete. So that's kind of how we did. It's fascinating what we learned about. So one of the reasons why people come up with these, which we call the 10 barriers to innovation, is because people, as soon as you say innovation, they think they have to invent the next iPhone or the iPod. The fact that I can simply improve what I am doing, they don't recognize that as an innovation.
Yeah.
So that is a form of innovation called continuous innovation, which the Japanese have been doing forever. But in the software services industry, people weren't aware. So we were probably amongst the first to make it into an organized discipline.
Okay.
I mean, this doesn't mean Cognizant was not innovating before. It was just that it was not consistent. Some people would do it, and there was no way to track it. You couldn't go to town with what have you done in innovation. It'll be very anecdotal. Oh, I done this, done that. And everybody had anecdotal evidences of innovation. But this kind of set us in a different path, and we got awarded as one of the top 10 innovation awards by McKinsey and HBR. They ran a competition and we got that award.
Nice.
So that's the story on innovation.
When you're talking about knowledge management and innovation in a, let's say, a system integration or a services kind of organization, I've come across pockets where they feel that if I start sharing, then I will lose my power, or I will lose whatever makes me important in the organization. So how do you address those kinds of mindsets?
Yeah, I have encountered that in my career too. The thing that I found is that this inspiration actually came from, there is an article, I don't know if you have come across. This is called Coe's Penguin.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there is an economist by name Ronald Coase who wrote the theory of the firm and why firms actually come into place. It's called the transaction. So basically firms exist to reduce the transaction cost of doing something. This theory of Ronald Coase won him the Nobel Prize in economics. It's brilliant. So another Yale law professor by name Yochai Benkler. I'm sure I'm slaughtering the pronunciation of the name. But he wrote an article called Coe's Penguin. He was talking about how does open source actually work.
Oh, okay.
And I was always curious, how come we are talking about incentive, motivation, R&R program, all that, but here through open source, like huge pieces of software like Linux and things are coming up. And there is no money to be made. What is driving all these people? Right? So, and it's a long paper, but the long story short, he identified that it is one of the primary drivers socio-psychological reward. This is wording.
Okay.
It's a mouthful, but basically he found out that that is what and that is the thing. I am a core committer of Linux. I am a this of WordPress. That is socio-psychological reward.
Okay.
I realized that in large companies, we don't leverage that phenomenon. And all we had to do was roll out these kinds of things. Innovation Champion Award, I am this blogger, the best certified thing. So we came up with a number of things which stood for meaningful organizational contribution.
Okay.
Right? And their identity is kind of tied to that sort of thing. I am an innovator is an identity. It is not just, so when I say I am a core committer of Linux, it's a identity.
Right.
So when people said I am a blogger within Cognizant, that was a kind of identity we had cultivated.
Okay.
So they would get invited to events that they enter and they would be requested to blog even though they may be the junior most person. That kind of gave them different levels of motivation. And the bonding that it creates, the community. Oh, I am part of this community which is doing all these things in the company. So this socio-psychological reward. In parallel, the HR team had come up with something called as the WAH point. W-A-H, WAH, right? Arey wah, we say, right? war points. So for all these activities, we would give them war points.
War points, okay.
Which then there is a Cognizant store and you can convert that to some goodies. Nothing expensive, but you can get some hats and stuff that you can buy with your war points. So it's like many things. Getting to meet senior people, like all kinds of sort of a different strokes for different folk. It can't be one strategy because each of us have unique, although there is a pattern, we belong to a certain need group. Some people motivated by awards and rewards, some people are motivated by the task, some people are motivated by something else. So you have to, your strategy has to address all those socio-psychological rewards.
Okay. So after working in these large enterprise, large problems and all that, why do you call your current company Tiny Magiq?
Yeah, good question. So what we found, and I think there are a couple of reasons. One is Tiny Magiq is a sort of a name that came to our head saying this is what we need to stop. But if you look at it at a higher level, in Tamil we have always said this. Siru thuli peri vellam, or little drops of water make a mighty big ocean. So we believe that we can make people make tiny changes. So when I was in Cognizant, I started a community called Tiny Change Community on the Cognizant 2.0 platform.
Okay.
And I would simply post something. So the idea was, if you make tiny changes to your life, brain actually likes that. There is a neuroscience behind. So a lot of people started posting, I made this change, that change, and it will be like comments are accumulating in the community. So that gave the sense that, okay, people don't actually resist tiny changes. They may resist big changes, but tiny they don't. Now, if I had said big magic company, right, expectations will be set too high. Tiny magic company, Tiny Magiq is cute. That's kind of what it is.
Nice.
So Tiny Magiq, tiny things aggregated over time can have magical impact.
Okay.
And this is something that we have all experienced in our lives. So nothing we do is theoretical exercise. We receive those benefits ourselves. For example, I'll give you an example. And I'm doing this for the benefit of your listeners. You might have heard this story before. I started working with, I came across Professor DJ Fogg's Tiny Habits method. It's about 7 years back.
Okay.
And I wanted to get into fitness, but the usual reasons of no time, all that was there. So I started with, after brushing teeth, 2 push-ups. So 2 push-ups takes all of 2 seconds.
Okay.
I couldn't argue that I don't have 2 seconds to spend. So I got into it. And within a year, I surprised myself by doing 50 push-ups at one go.
Oh, wow.
And I did it today also. So now I went from 2 push-ups for my age group is I am below pathetic performance.
Okay.
But 50 push-ups at one go puts me in the top 10% of humanity itself.
Oh.
So I went from rank pathetic performance to top decile performance. And some of the fitness things I do, actually young people will find it hard to do. So it's one example of how tiny things can aggregate. Now, Tiny Habits is a part of our methodology. So I'm now a certified coach, and me and my partner, we teach the Tiny Habits method as part of our program.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So we have converted soft skills, transformation, innovation into these tiny things which everybody can practice. And we use a software to journal that. As they practice it, they journal it.
Okay.
When they journal it, it creates a micro mentoring opportunity for us. Hey, did you think about that? And we do it in groups. So when we give a feedback to one person, that everybody else learns. So in 120 days, we can actually bring dramatic improvement. That people quite surprised by the kind of things they are able to do with such a method. So that is the origin of Tiny Magiq.
That's nice. I think probably that deserves another conversation later, as we are kind of limited on time. Usually the last question that I like to ask is, particularly for you, having also been a CIO, CXO roles, and seen so much of change in the IT, both technology, adaptation, and all that. What would be your advice for somebody who is thinking of whether I should get into IT or somebody who's just getting into IT?
I think that's a great question. To me, probably at a cellular level, I believe that technology is supremely important and that every business is a tech business. If they aren't today, then they don't understand the power of technology. So if anything, when I look at, I also work in the space of machine learning. There is already demand for a 2 million machine learning engineers. So everyone in technology should become a machine learning engineer.
Okay.
So if anything, technology is going to get itself even bigger role in our lives, if not already. So if you are not in IT, you are missing something. That's what I would say. But now, Tiny Magiq itself is on the intersection of behavior and technology and design and that. And that is the space in which computers can't easily replace us. I would say that you should direct yourself into those areas, not be a pure software coder, which I think probably 5 years from now, machines will write that program for you. I have already come across several instances where machines are able to write the code for you. So when I say IT, I mean tech in its broadest sense. That I think we have not scratched the surface with the number of problems that we face as humanity that technology could solve. It's just that we don't design and make effective use of technology. Hopefully that will change.
Yeah, that's very reassuring because many people have the doomsday prediction saying once AI ML is there, then IT will kind of be very, very minimal.
I know. I mean, I've also come across that.
Yeah. So thank you, Sukumar. This has been a very interesting conversation. There are a lot of learnings. I could relate to a lot of these things that I've gone through myself as well. And I'm sure it'll be interesting for the listeners. And I definitely am looking forward to another conversation at a later time on some of the models that have worked in transformations and knowledge management or capturing knowledge and sharing knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. You asked some fantastic questions. So if this interview is any interesting, I think it's thanks to you, Shiva. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sukumar. If you like the show and would like to share your experiences with the community or know someone else who might want to do that, please get in touch with us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com. That is podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Please rate the show on Podchaser, Stitcher, iTunes, or any other podcast client that you find us on. Please also share our episodes with your friends and others in your network. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured on our show, do write to us at this email address: podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.